right, we are now recording. So welcome. I hope you can all see the screen. We're going to talk about project management. It's going to be probably a refresher for everyone who's had an LSTA grant before. I'm not going to get too deep into all the details, but I want to just cover everything that we at the State Library would like to see in terms of paperwork and reporting and reimbursement requests and all of that from you. There are a few new things from IMLS that I especially wanted to highlight, so we'll just jump right in. If I haven't introduced myself, I'm Sue Lynn Jones. I'm the LSTA coordinator. So here's our agenda. It looks like a lot. I think we'll definitely be able to get through all of this in the next hour. Okay. So first on the agenda is the required signature forms. I see a variety of names here, and mostly it's the directors who look at these required signature forms and certifications. If you, as a project manager, haven't seen them, I recommend that you do. I'd really like you to look at them. We require one set per federal year. What these are, IMLS requires the state of Nevada to certify that we are in compliance with all federal laws when we receive this money, and the interim when we sub-grant, we ask you to certify that you will follow all of these requirements. This is what they are. There's a direct link, which I'll open up in a bit. But we have the certifications, we have the non-construction insurances, SIPA, single audit risk assessment. When it comes to SIPA and construction, we look at most of these things before your project even gets to the review and approval stage. So that's already taken care of. But now let me open this up. All right, I'm going to share a new screen. Okay, this is the certification document, right? It's 8 pages long. Do you see that? Okay. The first one is non-discrimination. You can read that in more detail. The second one is debarment and suspension, and that's what I want to talk about. I'll have a slide especially for this, but it's something that all sub-grantees need to do, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands the requirements. When I sub-grant to anyone or we contract with any vendor at the state, I look at the federal exclusion list to make sure none of the vendors are on that. So sub-grantees, we expect you to do the same. So if you are buying things from a vendor, all you have to do is go to this website. We're going to pop it up in a bit. You type in their names and you just make sure they're not excluded, because if they are, then you cannot use them as a contractor or a vendor. Okay. Drug-free workplace, federal debt status, trafficking in persons. I won't get into any of that. You can look at the laws and regulations more closely. Prohibitions against lobbying, we look at that in your application, so it doesn't look like any of you were doing any of that, and that's fine and good. Number 8, though, is the acknowledgement of IMLS support, and number 9, acknowledgement of federal support. Every year, these two sections get a little more robust. More things are added to them every year. I have made efforts to make sure that you all follow IMLS acknowledgement and federal support, but and it's in the grant manual too, but here it is in writing. You really need to make sure that you're accrediting IMLS on all publicity, on all social media, on all printed materials. If you're buying books, stick a little sticker in there. The certifications have it. You've already certified that you're doing it. We just want to make sure that you are. This section, acknowledgement of federal support is also important. If you're going out to bid on something, you are meant to put in the bid the percentage of funds that are federal, right? It is probably slightly late in this process if you've already gone out to bid and found a vendor, but this is the process that needs to be followed if you are going out to bid for something else, right? You have to put total cost of the program in percentages, okay? Certifications, here's some certifications that really don't apply to anybody here, but they are there just in case. Okay. Here's the appendix on trafficking in persons. It's pretty detailed. And then here's the final appendix B, which is also new for this year. It references quite a few executive orders that came out in the past few years. One of these, the September 2nd, 2020 memo, has been rescinded, so we're fine with that. But I encourage you to look at all of these executive orders that are in the certifications and make sure that your program and your project is in compliance with them. Okay, so when we hear executive orders get signed, they do trickle down to us at the project level here. Right, so just please look at that, okay? I'm gonna stop this share. I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint. You see the PowerPoint? Someone put in chat if you can see the PowerPoint. Okay, thank you, thank you. All right, so here's the debarment and suspension. You go to sam.gov and you, can I make that work? Okay. All right, we'll get back to that. This is where you go to sam.gov to type in your vendor names. We actually just went over this slide, but here it is in bigger font so you can see it. And here, federal support in bigger font. Okay. All right, sam.gov. All right, here we are at sam.gov. If you were to just go to sam.gov, you would go to exclusions right there. And then you type in your vendor. So I'm going to use a vendor that should be familiar through the statewide databases, EBSCO, right? We just type in EBSCO. No match is found, right? That means EBSCO is a good vendor. So just do this for all your vendors and make sure that you're in compliance. Okay. All right, any questions or comments about any of that? Okay, all right, we'll move on. Go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, risk assessment. On the risk assessment page, if you haven't filled it out, what it is we at the State Library, we subgrant to you, we have to assess how much of a risk your organization poses. And risk means if your level of experience in being able to complete the project as you've submitted and has been approved. Pretty much everyone here is low risk. Actually, I think everybody here is low risk. It's based on the number of years your organization has been in existence, your organization's experience with LSTA, right? You're all very low risk. But on the form, I have this little notation says that we will also do an internal risk assessment, and we do. But this year, these extra things have been added to the internal risk assessment. So after I get your risk assessment, I score you, and then I score you on these other things. And this is just a heads up, right? It doesn't impact your grant, but I would like you to know that this will be used next year too. So SAM exclusion list, like are you checking on the SAM exclusion list? Do you submit your reports in a timely and accurate way? Do you submit your reimbursement requests in a timely and accurate way? Are you responsive to program and fiscal requests? So if I email you a question, do you respond? That sort of thing. Organizational stability and conflicts of interest. So if you have any programs where your staff might have a potential conflict of interest, that comes into the risk assessment too. So this is just an FYI. Okay, any thoughts on that or questions? These additional risk assessment questions were added at the direction of our grants office. Right. So, okay, the next thing is the GIA. The GIA, you may or may not have seen this as well. This usually goes to the director. Your director signs it. My director signs it. It's our official contract, right? It's the agreement. On the GIA, and I'm going to put up an example. Okay, here's an example, a template. It's our template. Right there, grant number. So if you ever don't know what your grant number is, this is the number that we assigned to you. For federal year 21, it's always going to be 21-something. Okay, 21-15. Okay, that's your grant number. Here's the 45310. That's our grants to states program. That's the LSTA program. So if you have to ever submit anything to be approved, that's our federal number. Everything under here, general grant amounts and reimbursement procedures, requests for changes, that all outlines like your project in general. It shows that a match is required. It shows how much has been obligated, the amount of federal funds that your project has been approved for. The changes, this explains the changes. So when I say if you have a budget revision and it can't be more than 10%, like it's written into this part of the GIA. The reporting schedule will be here on your GIA. 4 quarterly reports, since these are 14-month projects. I had 3 reports last year, but then that leaves a 5-month gap. So I just squeaked in a little 4th quarter report there too, but it gives you a reporting schedule and it says when the final report is due. Okay. Here it says all requests, under request for fiscal programmatic changes, all requests for any kind of changes need to be done by next June, right? Because these have to go to the Deputy Attorney General and be signed, so it does take some time. So we want all that by June 30th. Right up above it, it says funds for the grant project are authorized according to the final application budget. Right, so that application that you submitted and was approved, that is your budget. Like it's not plopped into this GIA2 as reference. It's referenced right there. So it kind of incorporates your application into the grant agreement. Okay. Assurances and conditions, those are all the things that we just went over. Here, right here, it says that you will agree to sign them and complete them and abide by them. Okay. And then this little box right here, that's what authorizes LSTA. So if you need our award number, if you need the total award amount, if you want to know the date we got the award, it was January 19th, 2021. The indirect cost rate has caused a little bit of confusion, and that doesn't apply to you. That only applies to the state library. We do not take indirect cost for this. We're not allowed to, so it's a 0, right? So that's our award. There's our complete name and the awarding agency, and then my contact information, and then signatures of our administrator and your authorized official. And that's our contract, right? That's everything you should need is right here. Does anyone have any questions about that? I don't know if you all ever see the GIA, but it should be part of your grant files. Okay, I'm gonna stop the share. I'm gonna go back to PowerPoint. So we're back on project revisions. And so that kind of just goes with what I just said. Revisions to your project are revisions to your contract, right? When you have a contract with somebody and you change the scope of work, you have to amend the contract. So that's what a project revision is. We're amending the scope of work of your contract, and we have to do some paperwork. This year, since all projects go to August 31st, we're not doing any time extensions. We have in the past when projects ended on June 30th, but this time no. Okay. And the exception is the city scholarship. That's a different category, so don't worry about that. But if you have any changes at all, because they're changes to your scope of work, you need to notify me. And an email is fine, right? We intend to do this instead of this because we couldn't get this, right? It does not impact outcomes at all. In fact, our outcomes will be strengthened because of it, right? But you do have to put it in writing in an email and send it off to me. If there is more than a 10% change in any of your approved budget categories, we have to have the DAB approval and we have to have an amendment. So just bear that in mind. Okay. And then I would like you to document all of this in your quarterly reports, right? We couldn't do this, and so we did this and we asked for a budget revision and we put it in the quarterly report, okay? That means we have it all nice and orderly and in writing, and anyone who can back will see what happened and why we did it, okay? All right, moving on, any comments about that or questions? Okay, next up is the LibGuide. It's been pretty stable for the past 4 years. I started this LibGuide in 2017 and the structure remains pretty constant. Everything grant related will be somewhere in this document, in this web page, in this LibGuide, like everything. Because everything is there, it might be a little difficult for you to find things. So don't worry about that. Just ask me if you don't know where anything is and I'll point you to it. But it's, it's divided into genealogical categories, the grants that are available. Then you apply, and when you're awarded your grant, you're going to manage. And then we have like a calendar for deadlines. All the webinars will be listed in the webinars, including this one. The required surveys, and we get to that in a bit. This is where you find the required signature forms that we just talked about. So that is where that link is. And just IMLS guidance, whatever guidance has come down from IMLS, including allowable costs, that's where it is, and some information on ADA and ebooks and Title IX and publicity and all of that, right? So that is where things live on the 2021 LibGuide. Okay. So heads up, this has been a long time in coming, but I think for real, I will get grants management software this year. I have a purchase order out there. It's the grants management system that the state of Utah, the Utah State Library uses for their LSTA program. So it's been tried and vetted, and I know that I've seen examples and I know it works. So that will be coming. So if you apply for a mini grant sometime this year, you'll be applying to the grants software. Nothing is ironed out yet, but this is just also another heads up for you. The reports should be, directly software. You enter it into the system. You don't do a PDF. We'll still have the form where you can, fill it out anyway for your own self. but you will be entering them all online. But that hasn't happened yet, but that's coming, right? So how I envision that working is that the LibGuide will still be there, but instead of links to PDFs, you'll get links to the platform. Okay, and you will need user accounts, but I'll send an email out and we'll set that all up. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, so for now, bookmark the 2021 LibGuide. It will still have everything you need. Okay, next up is required surveys. These are surveys that IMLS started requiring maybe 5 years ago, and they're meant to help you. They really are meant to help you write your outcomes. If you haven't seen them, there are 4 instances in which, well, 5 instances in which you have to survey, right? Most of them involve doing things for your coworkers, the library staff. The only one that involves the public is if you have instructional programs. That's any kind of instructional program. This right now is an instructional program. Okay, so you are allowed to figure out how you want to manage your surveys. Like if you want to pop them into SurveyMonkey, or if you have LibGuide surveys or any kind of survey software, you are absolutely welcome to do that. You can do paper, right? I don't need the individual surveys. We just want the aggregated survey results at the end of your project. Surveys are also a really good place where you can ask questions. Okay. Advice is avoid survey fatigue. If you are doing a similar program every single week with the same people, like use your best judgment on how often you want to survey them, whether it's like at the beginning of your project and at the very end, or if you decide you want to survey them every single week, that's fine with me. You have to have surveys. You have to have surveys for your programs, but we want meaningful results, right? And that means avoiding survey fatigue. So this, I'm just putting in your capable hands. You can determine how best to do this, but you have to do it. And speaking of surveys, since this is an instructional program and it's LSTA funded, because the LSTA program is LSTA funded, I have a survey for you. And I am going to try, I don't know if you can, probably can't click on it. I'm going to try and pop it in the chat. This will, the survey will also serve as proof that you attended this mandatory webinar. Okay. Okay. Next up. Okay. Next up is reimbursements. The state is reimbursement only. There are very, very few exceptions, and we have to get approval for those exceptions. One exception was the CARES subgrants that we did in federal year 20. If you're a public library, you may experience those. No, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The opt-in grants. We are trying out advance payments for those. For the upcoming ARP grant, which you're probably wondering about, if I haven't announced yet, we will have an advance payment option. Advance payment means we give you the money up front, but you still provide all the documentation that you would if you were reimbursement only. So I think the paperwork level is probably the same. You will just get the money first rather than last. That's right, there's all the sorts of backup we need. If you're asking for salaries of any type, you have to have this federal time and effort. It's the time and effort form, and it's federal timekeeping. It's federal regulation. If you get paid with LSTA, you have to fill out a time and effort. I'm LSTA funded, so I have to fill out a time and effort every week. So that's required. You won't get reimbursed if I don't have that time and effort form to go with your reimbursement packet and put in your file. Okay. What else? The reimbursement form is where you will document your match. Most projects require a 10% match, and this reimbursement is where you supply all the backup. If your backup is salaries, then you can do a time and effort form for match for salaries, or you can do whatever your financial person system has determined is the way to document match, right? I'm not going to be picky about that, but you still have to document it and submit it, okay? The thing with reimbursements is that we need you to do them regularly, okay? Regularly meaning, please do not wait until August of next year to submit your reimbursements for, your whole entire grant year. That means your library is carrying that money. That also makes it more difficult for my finance department. And one thing I learned from CARES is that there was very real concern that CARES funds were not being spent. And they were being spent, especially LSTA CARES, because we distributed them to public libraries, but they weren't being reimbursed all at once, right? So as far as certain people could see, it looked like CARES was not being used, right? So we want you to spend your money down and ask for reimbursements regularly. There is no written schedule that we have, but I recommend quarterly. Okay, quarterly, at least quarterly. It's good fiscal management, it's good project management. Okay, and your library does not need to be out all of this money for your grant project. Any thoughts about that? Okay. So this is a summary of the reports that I'm asking for federal year 21. 4 quarterly reports. Of course, this does not apply to cycles 2, 3, and 4, the mini grants, because of start later. If you're going to apply for a cycle 2 mini grant, you'll need 3 quarterly reports, right? You won't need 4. 1 final report, and then regular reimbursement requests. These are quarterly report questions. I don't think they're too bad. It's pretty straightforward, right? Do you feel this grant is helping you provide better service, right? And then you explain, was your project on track? There's no wrong answer to this, honestly. Your progress, if you're not on track, you just document why. It's all good, right? But if you don't document why, then you're sort of violating your scope of work, because your timeline outlines what your project is going to look like, and it's got these benchmarks per month. So you want to document it here so we understand why you're out of sync with your timeline. And then the quarterly report will ask for a budget summary, and that's to really make clear where everybody is. We've spent 0, or we've spent it all, but we've been reimbursed 0, right? That's the point of that, of the budget part. All right, anything anyone want to add or ask? Okay. Then we have the final report. The final report is much more detailed than the quarterly report. The final report is what goes to IMLS. I usually take your words directly, maybe edit a little, maybe proofread, maybe add a few things from your quarterly report to totally flesh out your project, but they're mostly your words. And this goes directly to IMLS and it gets put in the searchable database. So it's fairly important that your final report paints a really, really good picture. So I know that seems ages off because it's not due for like a year and a half, but I personally think that it's good to always bear this in mind, right? We haven't even started the project yet, but I know that I'm going to need this documentation for the final report. I know I'm going to need photos. I know I'm going to need some good anecdotal information, and because IMLS needs to have LSTA reauthorized every year, and in order to reauthorize, it's really good to show how these dollars are doing good in the state of Nevada, right? So you want to just always keep that thought. Lessons learned are super important because the lessons learned part is where you can help out anyone else who might want to do a similar project. These are the things that you learned, and we don't want to, make everyone go through the same process. Even though every library is different, lessons learned help us advance, right? So you might be wondering, if everything is going online and we're going to have software, how does this work? So how that will work, and not just for federal year 21, but for anyone who has a federal year 20 grant, I'm working on having you enter your information directly. So no more PDFs, no more PDFs with a million different attachments, with activities attachments and survey attachments. Those PDFs were my best attempt at replicating the online software. So now you can just avoid that middle step, and you will enter your final reports directly into the software. And as it says, I will create user accounts for you and have some training, and we'll give it a go. Thoughts about that?
Sue Lynn?
Yes.
This is Nancy. So I'm planning on applying for the second quarter grant for the mini grant.
Mm-hmm.
So will that software be ready for that?
Probably not, because it's supposed to start July 1st, and then I have to have a software implementer to sort of build it out. So probably not. I would say
So I should
just go ahead and fill out the form, the PDF.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah. I'm going to work really hard to get everyone's projects, at least the structure of it, into the software, right? So we don't have to go backwards. But yeah, anyway. Okay, final thoughts on final reports. As I said, this is how we show the good that is being done in the state of Nevada in our libraries. It's through your final reports. So no pressure, but like this is where we tell our stories. This is how we show that we do indeed merit more IMLS LSTA allocations and funding. So they should be, as it says, understandable to any reader, right? Any, especially our legislators. Photos are great. They generally are not made public. Those are part of the system that isn't made public, but it is good for IMLS. Okay. Okay. Records retention. This slide is unchanging because records retention for 5 years, essentially, it's all the same. You need to retain your records through December 31st, 2026. Because it's not based on year, it's based on 5-year plan. Right? So for the next For this current year and next federal year, you still will keep your records through December 2026. And then January 1st, 2027, you can chuck them all and start all over. But these are what you need to keep, all the official grant documents. You keep them in whatever format your local requirements have, but your retention schedule is federal, okay? Any questions about that? Okay. I always like to point this out because it's federal funds and we do need to make every effort to make sure our programs are accessible to people no matter what their proficiency with English is. So if you need to have some things translated, I recommend that if you haven't written your project yet, if you're going to write a mini grant and you would like to get things translated into other languages that are common in your area, that you write that into your grant. Or maybe that can be in kind if you have local funds to do that. But it is something that's been required for a while, and well, since 1964. But you know, it's a good thing, right? To make programs accessible. The policy, if you would like to look at it, is right there, that link. It doesn't say you have to make everything accessible in every language. It's that you make things that are in demand for the in-demand languages, okay? This is number 8 of the required certification, number 8 in the required certifications from IMLS. This is what we're talking about, publicity. Like this is just a nice little cheat sheet on what you can do. It's plop a logo onto everything. Tag IMLS on social media. And if you have a press release, send it to me and I will send it to IMLS. Like this is the quick and easy way to meet your publicity requirements. All of the social media hashtags are on the LibGuide. Oh my gosh, document for final report. One of the things you can do in your final report is like, put how many hits, you know, like your tweet or your Facebook post, your Instagram on your project got, right? Take a screenshot. It shows interaction and user engagement. Okay, site visits. We did not do site visits in 2020, not even virtual site visits, and I'm not going to, unfortunately, because we're kind of thin on the ground at the state library and we have new leadership. So no site visits for 2020. Potential site visits for 2021, probably yes, because as I said, we have new leadership and we want to see, Mike Strom will want to see your projects, right? Whether that's virtual or in person, I'm not sure yet because things are still up in the air. But these are some of the things that we look at, and I have a site visit questionnaire that I would send out far prior to your site visit. If you've ever experienced one of our site visits, I like them because I get to see what you're doing. I don't think they're that bad, but that's me. So I hope to do them. I hope to. Any questions on that? Oh, we're almost at the end. This is something I made last month because there are so many grants coming out. If you haven't seen it, it's LSTA. It's the grants that we do at the state library, but it's also like every other library grant that I can find, including the ALA grants and the IMLS grants and a couple of vendor grants. So I can copy this link. Put it in chat. You should take a look at it. This is not something you have to worry about now, but be aware. There were some changes to federal regulations this last year, and one of them was the phasing out of the DUNS number. So this is the timeline. The DUNS number, if you filled out the application, I always want your DUNS number. It's like your library's social security number. I will be sending an email out to all the directors soon, outlining all of this here. Basically, DUNS numbers are no longer going to be accepted. So if you apply for an LSTA grant next year, federal year 2022, we're going to need a unique entity identifier number, which is available through sam.gov, right? You can still use your DUNS number per the timeline, but next year we're going to need that. So you don't have to act on it now. If you're not a director, you probably don't have to act on it at all, but it's coming up, because I feel that somehow still I get some random inquiries on what's a DUNS number. And I understand that not everyone has access to the DUNS number, but just heads up again. Okay. So you would go to sam.gov and register. And as I said, I will send an email. Oh, okay. You know what? That's it. 43 minutes. I hope I didn't go too quickly. If you have any questions at all about any of it, it was really, really a quick overview of the reports. And again, the new things are the numbers 8 and 9 certifications from IMLS that talk about IMLS support and federal support. That Appendix B that has the executive orders that you have to be aware of and be in compliance with. Those were the new things. The other new things that are important but not too stressful are the rollout of the grants management software and the rollout of the SAM unique entity identifier for next year. Oops, sorry. We're at the question slide. If you can't think of your questions now, you know where I am. I am right at that email. I will be back in the office on July 1st, so in 2 days. So that will be my actual phone number, unfortunately. I liked working from home. I like working from home, but yes, there's my phone number. I'm going to stop the recording right now.